The next few videos are going to have a look at working with percentages. We're going to start at percentages of amounts because this is basically the easiest one and you need it for working with other topics. Now, you will have hopefully been shown how to do this with a calculator and without the calculator. This video is going to focus on doing it without the calculator because using a calculator obviously is quite easy, you just follow the formula. So we'll split it up into 3 different questions. We'll go with a green, amber and a red. Red being the hardest, we'll have a look at finding like 17.5%, green being the easiest. So find 30% of 300. Now, I always tell people when you're doing percentage of amounts, there's a few key percentages. 10% is the one I always use, 5%, 1%, and sometimes you may need them what 2.5% is. They tend to be the 4 though, that will allow you to answer near enough any question you get on percentages. Now, you won't always have to do them 4, it depends on what the question is. If we have a look at the first one, I'm going to find 10% first of all. To find 10%, you divide by 10, not because the number is 10, okay? So it doesn't mean to find 30%, we divide by 30. It's because there's 10 lots of 10% in 100%. So I'm splitting that 100% down into 10 parts, so I divide by 10. So 300 divided by 10, and that's nice and easy to do. You move each number right one place when you're dividing by 10, so that becomes 30. Now, 30%, all I need to do here is times that by 3. Okay, I don't need to find 5% or 1%, anything like that, because I can use the fact that I know 10% to find 30% quite easily. It's just 3 lots of 10%. So if we have a look here, 30%, and I've drawn a little diagram, 30% in the orange, 10% in the yellow, you'll notice you need 3 lots of 10%. So you can either add 30, 30 and 30, or you can do 30 times by 3, both will give you the same answer. So I'm going to do 30 times by 3. 3 times 3 is 9 and add the 0 is 90. So 30% of 300 is £90, quite straightforward. Next one, find 15% of 40 grams. Same thing again, start with 10%, divide by 10 is 4 grams. Now 15%, I can't this time use the fact that I know 10% to work up to 15 because 15 is not in the 10 times table. It's not a multiple of 10. So it's not easy for me to just use the fact that I know 10% to get to 15. So what I have to do, I have to find another percentage this time. So if you have a look, there's 15%, there's 10%, which I know. That bit now that I need to get up to 15% is 5%. Now 5% is really easy to find because if you know 10%, then 5% is just obviously going to be half of it. So 10% is 4 grams plus 5% is just going to be half of that 4 grams, so 2 grams. So if I add 4 grams and 2 grams, and I've highlighted the 2 grams because that's what 5% is, half of the 10%, I get 6 grams. So 15% of 40 grams is 6 grams. Hardest one then, find 17.5% of 200 litres. Start with the same, 10%, 200 divided by 10 is 20 litres. That won't allow me to easily find 17.5%, so I have to find another one. I'm going to find 5. Well, 5% is nice and easy. That's half of 20 litres, is 10 litres. The more information I get, so the more I know, the more 10%, 5%, 1% and so on that I know, the easier the problem becomes. Now, if I combine 10% and 5%, I can get to 15%. I'm still 2.5% off. So I still need to find something else which is going to allow me to get to 17.5%. If you think about 2.5%, even though it sounds quite difficult to find, 2.5 is just half of 5. So similar like we did to find 5% by halving 10, to get 2.5%, we just half the 5%. So 2.5% is half of 10 litres, which was 5%. So half of 10 litres is 5 litres. So to get 17.5 litres, I need my 10% and my 5%, that's 15%, and my 2.5%, that's 17.5%. So if I add 10, 20 and 5 together, I get the answer of 35 litres. And that is as difficult basically as percentages of amounts will become. So simple summary, always find 10%. Sometimes this will be enough to help you answer the question. Sometimes you then may need to go on and find 5%. That may be enough. And sometimes you may even need to go on and find 2.5%, depending on how difficult it is.